Hi everyone, welcome back to Be Rich. It's me, Vinod, recording remotely from London again. Today, unfortunately, I couldn't get Anand in because he's been busy, so I thought I'd talk about a stock or a company for a change instead of talking about macroeconomic news. But I would be wrong if I did not mention some of the news which is influencing our market. As I spoke in the last video, we did expect the market, if it pulled back, then we would see not much of a movement in the Indian market because the Indian market was closed yesterday. And as expected, with the news of the government shutdown and dragging on the implications not being clear immediate, and the Supreme Court, what it has come out saying that it's not really sure if Donald Trump as a president is allowed to do what he's doing. This has led to a lot more confusion in the market. So what we do have is a lot more volatility ahead of us. And we did see the market pulling back from the selling it did the day before. And that is why, if you saw the Indian market, it really did not open negative or positive. It was a little tepid, to say the least. That's where everything stands as far as the news is concerned. Of course, this government shutdown, I would say, is a larger problem than the Supreme Court for right now for the Americans, because if and when, it's not an if, it's just a question of when this government shutdown finally stops. Restarting this whole federal engine of theirs is not as easy. It is more and more expensive as these things drag on, because you got back pay, then you have interest on back pay, and all this piles on to the government more and more. And people who have been laid off, will they be rehired? Contract workers, all this sits there looming, which is going to add more pressure to the American economy. So I would say the shutdown is not making as much news as the other things are. So I would say it should. Anyway, looking at economically. Today I want to talk about a company from a spin-off from a very famous, construction company. There's a company in Switzerland known as Holcim, is a construction company that started way back in 1912. And they're into cement and concrete and other aggregates. And they're one of the world's largest building materials company. They have an American division, which they spun off in June. That division now is called Amrize, Amrize. So America Rise, kind of the idea behind the name. So Amrize. And this newly spin-off company is what I think we should have in our radar. And let me pitch my case and let you give your feedback in the comments if you think I'm right in what I'm pitching. So this is a 100% spin-off from the main company, and it had a revenue of around $11.7 billion in 2024. The initial valuation has put it in a market capital of $30 billion. The spin-off will become one of America's largest cement suppliers and second in commercial roofing providers. So what are the growth drivers for this? Of course, we have the American infrastructure, the $1 trillion bill, which is one of the major growth drivers, because for construction and infrastructure, of course, you need concrete and cement. The other is the major undersupplying in the US for housing, and that is also another growth driver. And of course, the latest, these data centers and other commercial buildings which are in sudden high demand in the United States, that also is another great growth driver. So long term, if you look at it, for these growth drivers, there is a long-term demand for cement, concrete, and other aggregates. As far as the management, they're saying they're expecting an EBITDA, that's earnings, by 2028. They're hoping they'll be growing at around 11%, 8 to 11%, which is not bad, which is pretty good. Another major advantage Amrize has is it has complete vertical integration. Of course, we spoke about vertical integration. The advantage in something like this in vertical integration is from the quarries to all the way to the doorstep of the customer is their product services. Amrize takes it. So from getting the material to producing the material to packaging it to supplying it, marketing it, they handle end to end. So which is good. That means they can really compete in terms of pricing and cost, and definitely pass that on to their customers, and also maintain their market share, which is another good thing. As far as what we should keep our eye on, because it's a spin-off, is the earnings for quarter 3 and quarter 4 2025 results. That will give us more light, because it'll become a standalone company and we'll be able to understand really what is happening when it's become a standalone. So if you are interested in this company and you're interested in what I'm pitching, then definitely you should be studying their earnings reports and keeping an eye on their financials as we go. In terms of valuations, what am I looking at? Well, it's trading below its peers. If you consider the other construction materials companies in the United States and globally, they are trading below that. The stock initially dropped around 9% on debut, and I would say that's an upside of at least 20 to 25% just based on that comparison alone. So around $60 per share is where I think we can probably look at this going. So there is strong cash flow generation and a lot of tailwind for them, like I said. But there are things to keep an eye on, though valuation looks very promising. Because if you look at their balance sheet, they do have debt. They've raised $3.4 billion in the bond market before they spun off. And now the total debt after the spin-off stands around $5 billion. Their debt to EBITDA is around 1.6 net, which is not too bad, right? And they have a bond rating of BBB plus and BAA plus from S&P and Moody's, respectively. So there is a moderate debt load at this, and that is something we should keep an eye on, though the foundation is very strong for this business. The blind spots, I would say, as an investor, where you should not get carried away and keep an eye on, is on the industry itself. It's a very cyclical industry, cement and construction materials, meaning there's a rise and fall in these construction booms and busts. So that is something you have to keep an eye on. Then, of course, this trade policy, these tariffs, those will also have a definite impact on something like this. So currently the stock is trading at $50.80. So what are your views? Do you believe in what I'm pitching? Amrize, have you heard of this company? Do you think this is something in your wheelhouse? Are you in construction, or especially in construction in the United States? And would you look at this company? Or have you looked at Holcim, the parent company, before in Switzerland? Or is it something you've owned? I'm curious to know of all this. Put it down in the comments. I'll definitely have a look and read. And if it's warranted, in the next video, I'll give my feedback on any of those comments. I do have another two companies which I do want to talk about. A Japanese companies there, which I'm sure you guys have not heard of. So keep an eye out. And I'll come back with a European and a Japanese company which I wanted to talk about. Unless Anand, I'm able to pull him in, then of course we will talk about some macroeconomic news, or if anything earth-shattering happens in the world, we'll definitely have to put this into pause and get into that. Anyway, I hope you had a wonderful day and a wonderful evening. From me here in gloomy old England, I'm saying a good evening, and I'll see you again tomorrow with another one. Thank you for being with me on Be Rich. Nothing else more to say. See you soon.